My name is Brent. I just recently got my first real iOS development job. Before that, I was a back-end engineer, so not new to software engineering. And I did get to do a little bit of like iOS development, not really a full-time job. I'll kind of go into a little bit about that. I wasn't really, I feel like this is such a huge topic, but for time considerations, I'm kind of just going to go through a little bit of everything. So I'll just kind of dive right in. So like I mentioned before, I come from a software engineering background, but I'm going to kind of just lay out like, some of this as if I was starting from scratch. The first thing, just I realized several years ago that I wanted to do it just for fun. And then kind of just started noodling around. Didn't really know where to begin. So I started with hacking with Swift. I feel like that's just great, whether you're a seasoned engineer or not. And I've also used some Codeco articles and books. And then also, I know that in this day and age, it's very rare to actually buy a physical book, but I really love learning from them. I've listed several here. Swift Style is amazing. I bought it thinking it was just going to teach about like good style, but it really taught me a lot. Um, the Swift Coding Challenge book I bought to ramp up for interviewing. I actually did not need to use it very much because I got my offer before I really dove in, but I know that there are several questions that I have seen in interviews. And I'm also just a huge fan of the test-driven development iOS development with Swift book as well, and a bunch of other stuff. So there's way too many to learn. So that's kind of what I did to get my knowledge to be able to start building apps. Um, so then I'll just kind of go into like the interview and everything like that. I know that's something that a lot of people are curious about. When I realized that I wanted to take this from a hobby to actually do it full time, I'm somebody that struggles a lot with the terminology. I know what it does and how it works, but like sometimes I'll forget the name. Like for instance, I came from a Java backend background, so I keep forgetting to call them protocols. I call them interfaces a lot. Even though you have to type out the word protocol, that's just one example. Um, so I really kind of had to just learn the terminology because it's not just good enough. I feel like to know what it does, you also got to use the right. Learned like architecture, design patterns, MVC, MVVM, things like that. Really tried to just think of everything that I could. Star questions, not a huge fan of them, but coming up with examples for different situations. And then from there, really the big parts are coding, both iOS specific and then leak code. I put sadly there because I'm not a fan. I know some people like them a lot, but I feel like it really just depends on what type of company you get. And interviewing is unfortunately kind of the luck of the draw. I feel like you could interview at the same place two different times and have two wildly different experiences. Um, but now I'm just gonna kind of go into what I've been doing. So I got hired on at PayPal. So I'm working on the iOS development app. Actually, I just got extremely excited because literally yesterday, my first changes made it into the App Store. So I'm showing friends and family like, hey, you see that little thing? I designed that, and they're like, oh, cool, whatever. But I was excited. Um, the first few days was really just setting up my dev environment. Going through the code base, and they give you a few exercises to do. And then my first task was actually probably the best thing that you could get for your first task because it took me all over our individual module within the app. So it was a bunch of small UI fixes. Some of them were as small as literally just changing the color of something that was already there. Other times it was adding like a little bit more padding. But because they were all over the place, I really got a lot of immersion inside of the application. And then recently, I also dove into some observability and analytics work. So we put a lot of different analytics triggers inside the app so that we can tell like if something crashes, we can see what happened up until then, or if users are going back and forth between two pages, we can kind of create a story on did something not load properly or something like that. And then now I'm going to slowly be transitioning. We're doing a project where we are moving from REST APIs to GraphQL. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, I kind of kept it short, just because I wasn't entirely sure which direction to take this in. So I'll stop sharing because that's all I pretty much have on it. But like I mentioned, I feel like a lot of things, really, my experience is much different than a lot of people's experience. Getting their first, dev job, interviewing is tough, and it really depends. I could sit here and tell about my experience and what I went through, but somebody else might not, um, have the same experience. Um, so that's all I have.